We will now proceed to the next topic, which is character I/O. In C++, all data is interpreted as input and output as characters. For example, the output of the number 10 is interpreted as two characters 1 and 0. Also, an input of the number 10 is also done as 1 and 0. Interpretation of 10 as the number 10 or as characters depends on the program. Conversion between characters and numbers is usually done automatically. Now let's talk about low-level character I/O in C++. Low-level C++ functions for character I/O allows us to perform character input and output. As mentioned a while ago, our input and output are actually read as character or group of characters. And they might not perform automatic conversions in the case of low-level C++ functions for character I/O. And this would allow us to do input and output in any way that you can devise as necessary in your program. Now let's talk about some of the member functions that we can use in C++ character I/O. For example, let's talk about the member function get. With the member function get, it is considered as a member function of every input stream. What it does is it reads one character from an input stream. It stores the character read in a variable of type char, the single argument that the function takes. And it does not use the extraction operator as opposed to what we have done in the previous example. Instead, this one performs some automatic work, while in the case of the get function, it deals with your input one character at a time. How it works, we will see in the next examples. And of course, another characteristic of the function get is it does not skip blanks. It would still read blanks and consider it as another character. Now, how do we use the function get? For example, we have the following lines which use get to read a character and store it in the variable next symbol. So for example, we declared a variable of data type char and we named it next symbol, and then we use the following function, specifically the get function of our cin stream object, and then assign the value to this character variable next symbol. Thus, any character will be read with these statements. And of course, that includes blank spaces. And it also includes the new line character. And we have the following basic syntax for the get function. Of course, we first need to have a stream object, then we will call the get function, and of course we need to have the dot operator, and finally we need to provide the argument, which is in this case is a character variable. We have the following examples. For example, we declared a character variable named next symbol, then we use the get function to provide an input for the following variable. Then another example that we have here is we used an input file stream, then we linked an input file for that, and this time we use the get function of our input file stream to get one character at a time using our input file, and then whatever character that we extract from this input file, we store that in this variable one character at a time. Now let's talk more about get. So for example, we have the following code. We declared three character variables, C1, C2, and C3. Then we use the get function to provide input for each of these variables. For example, we were given the following input: A and B, new line, then CD. So what will happen to our three input variables? This is what will happen. C1 will have a value of A, C2 will have a value of B, and C3 will have a value of new line. If we will remember, the get function will read every character from our input stream, and of course that includes the new line character. So that's why the content of our third variable C3 is the new line character. Because if we will take a look at this input, right after B, there is actually a new line character, hence followed by the next line which contains C and D. However, due to the nature of the get function, it reads the new line character and treated it as part of the input. In this case, if we are going to use the extraction operator, such as this one, it would place C in the C3 variable. It's because the extraction operator skips the new line character, as opposed with the get function, which also reads even the new line character. Let's talk about the end of the line. So, to read and echo a line of input, for example, we look for the new line character at the end of the input line, such as this one. We would like to output the following. Okay. To do that, we will use the get operator, the get function. So in this case, we will read our input, then one by one we will read our text input until we reach the end of the line. To make this clear, let's take a look at an example in which we will enter a line and let's read the input one character at a time and then expect it to stop the moment that we reach the end of the line character. For example, let's take a look at this. Okay, so we're just going to use our existing file and then modify it and insert the code that we have here, and let's see what will happen. Okay, let me do this. Okay, so what we will do is we will input a line of characters. So let's see what will happen. Okay, so let's try this one. Okay, so what happened here actually is that our program read our input one character at a time using the get function. And every character that it reads from our input is stored into this variable symbol, which is of character data type until such time that it reaches the end of our input, which actually contains the new line character. So that will also be read by the get function, and that will now tell our program to stop the execution of this loop, hence the end of our program. Now, what's the difference between the two? We have the following as new line characters, although the other one is shown in different ways. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is a value of type character, and it can be stored in a variable of type character. On the other hand, the other one is a string containing only one character. So which means it is still a string, only that it contains just a single character. And take note that it cannot, although it's just a single character, it is treated as string. Therefore, it cannot be stored in a variable of type char. In a cout statement, they produce the same result, which is, of course, a new line. Now let's talk about the member function put. Just like the get function, it is a member function of every output stream. And it requires one argument of type char, and it places its argument of type char in the output stream. How it works, we will see in a couple of examples later on. So, the syntax for the put function is quite similar to that of the get function. Of course, you need to have your output stream object. Then, you simply call the put function, and of course, you must not forget the dot operator as well as to provide the argument that is required whenever you call the put function. Here's an example. So in this case, we would like to put a character in our stream. In this case, we would like to put whatever the value of this variable. In this example, we also would like to put a single character A into our output stream. And in this case, we would like to call the open function for our stream object, which is linked to an output file. And in this case, we would like to put the single character Z into this file. Another member function that we have is the member function putback. The putback member function places a character in the input stream. Putback is also a member of every input stream. It is useful when input continues until a specific character is read, but we do not want to process the character. It places its argument of type char in the input stream, and then the character placed in the stream does not have to be a character read from the stream. As you have seen, when we use the get function, we read every character that was provided in the input stream. And of course, the moment that you read a character from the input stream, of course, your cursor to that particular input keeps on moving. And as far as your input stream is concerned, it will point to the last character that was read by your get function. However, there will be times that you don't have to process such character because that is not required by your input. So in that case, instead of processing that character, you can simply put that back into our input stream. And that's where you use the function putback. Later on, we will see an example for that. And here it is. The following code reads up to the first blank in the input stream fin and writes the characters to the file connected to the output stream fout. So for example, what we did here is, of course, we establish an input stream and we name it fin. Then we called the get function. And of course, whatever character that we read from this input stream will be stored into this variable. Next, what will happen is we will keep on reading our input stream until such time that we reach the end of our stream. And the point here is that while we did not see a space character, we will keep on reading whatever is our input stream. And in case that a character or a space character has been read, then that will not be processed. Instead, it will be returned into our input stream using the putback function. And that is what we have here. The blank space read to end the loop is put back into the input stream. It is important that we check our input. It's because incorrect input can produce worthless output, and that's where the functions that we had, such as get and putback, can be used. We use input functions that allow the user to re-enter input until it is correct, and that can also be a good practice, which means that we can echo the input and ask the user if it is correct, and therefore the user can confirm if the input was indeed correct. If the input is not correct, we can allow the user to enter the data again. For example, we have an example in 5.7 which obtains an integer from the user. So in this case, the function getInt prompts the user, reads the input, and displays the input. After displaying the input, the function getInt will ask the user to confirm the number and reads the user response using a variable of type character. The process is repeated until the user indicates with a yes answer that the number entered is indeed correct. To see the example, let's take a look at the source code. So let's take a look at this function getInt. So based on its description, this is what the function does. It will ask the user if the input that was provided is indeed correct, just like this one. So it will ask the user for a number, and then it will echo the number that was provided to confirm from the user that the input is indeed correct. And we also have another function, newLine. What it does is it reads all the characters remaining in the input line but does nothing with them and essentially discarding them. New line is used to discard what follows the first character of the user's response to get lines that would ask if the input was correct. And the new line character is discarded by that function. So let's go back to our example. As you can see here, the new line function is called by the getInt function. And what is happening inside the new line function? Here it is. After the user input has been read, the remaining character will be discarded until such time that the input has been properly entered by the user. In this case, we are going to run our example. So let's say we are going to input a number. Let's say we input the number 5. And of course, after I press enter, a new line character will actually follow our input, which is number 5. And if we will take a look at our example here, okay, what the function does is it will discard all the new line character, thus giving way to the next iteration of our loop, in which the user will be asked for its input. And that's it. Let's say we confirm that our answer is indeed correct. There it is. Now, let me show you another example. Let's say I will input another number. Okay. So for the sake of demonstration, let's say let me input 7.0. Okay. So if you will notice, what happens is that our program, our function getInt, was able to read our input. And as a matter of fact, it was able to see that we entered 7. But as you can see here, the remaining character remains in our input stream. So what happened here, for example, is the next character in our input is the dot character. So what will happen is our program will continue, and whatever remains in our input stream will be passed here. So as you can see here, the period was actually interpreted as our response to this particular code, therefore placed inside this variable, and therefore it was interpreted as a character other than y. So it's just like that we typed no, and therefore we are again asked for our output. So for example, let me confirm another number, and let's say yes. Okay, so that's it. So which means whenever we use functions such as get, we also need to be careful that the expected input was actually provided.